to say thanks to everybody for coming. Okay. All right. So you're okay. So I'm just saying hello and welcome. Okay. Hello and welcome. Yeah. So I'm director of parks for the town, and this has been a multi-year project. We really appreciate the support that's been shown for it to this point. We are now heading into phase 3.
Well, not in this office.
As our consultant. You'll see them on the screen, and I think Karen's going to run through a few of the ways today is going to work. And yeah, what you're doing today is you're supporting the development of a space that will support the community of arts and culture that exists in Collingwood and hopefully raise it to the next level. So today is about sort of showing off this next phase and getting everybody started. There will be a lot of public consultation to follow this. But yeah, thanks for coming, and appreciate you being here.
Thank you. Okay, I just wanted to go over a bit of how we're envisioning the format. This is largely a virtual session today, but we wanted to make sure that we gave everybody opportunity to participate, particularly if virtual doesn't work for you. So we are joining the virtual group here. You'll see everyone here. It's like we're all in the same Teams meeting. But how we're going to manage questions and comments, a couple different ways. We have a microphone set up over here by Dean. You're welcome to come to the microphone and ask a question. What I would suggest is just flag me down so that I can do the raise the hand function so that they know to call on us. And you can say your question here, or we do have cue cards and pencils. If you want to grab a few of those, you're welcome to use that to write down a question or a comment. Throw your hand up. Amanda, Dean can come grab those for you, and I can either speak the question on your behalf, or I can throw questions into the chat. I mean, if you have a preference one way or the other, say put that on the cue card. But we're just going to do our best to make sure everybody gets to participate, even though we are coming through as one computer on a Teams meeting. It's a little echoey, Tyler. I don't know if that's just me, but.
Sorry, and if I could just, before I hand things off and we carry on, I do want to recognize that there are members of the steering committee that was selected by council here present. So if you're a steering committee member, could you raise your hand? Terrific. And I think that was everybody I noticed. But anyway, I just want to say a special thanks to the steering committee members who have agreed to participate and provide advice into the process. Obviously, they're very committed and they're here. But I just wanted to make sure we said thanks.
Thank you. I also want to say thanks to the members of council who are here today. If you want to wave your hands, thank you. And then last couple things, and then we'll get going. We do have a sign-in list here. If you can, let us know who you are, contact info, so that we can keep you updated. We also have a couple options online for staying updated, particularly with this project. Go to Engage Collingwood. You'll find this project. You can hit the subscribe button there, and then anytime there's an update, that'll get sent out to you. And then we're also encouraging people to subscribe to the collingwood.ca newsletter option. So this is about all Collingwood news. It'll just drive any sort of news item to your inbox. So if you haven't done that already, we would encourage it. And I think that's it. We will turn it over to our friends at Colliers.
Thanks, Karen and Dean. So first off, thanks everyone. It's great to see so many people in the crowd there today, and all the people that are online. It's fantastic. Are you okay, Karen? Do we sound okay? Let's maybe do a sound check from this side. Everything's come through clear? So again, thank you all for joining this afternoon. This is an important project, and as Dean alluded to, there's been a lot of back work, and this is more or less what we're going to take you through here today is where we're at and what the next steps are. And then we're going to get down to the end and we're going to pose some sort of higher level questions and try to collect a bit of feedback from everybody that's participating in the session today. Just bear with me as I sort out my technology. So off of the top, Colliers Project Leaders has offices all across Canada, and we acknowledge that our work takes place within the ancestral, traditional, treaty, and unceded territories, of which many continue to be home to First Nations peoples, Inuit and Métis. We continue to benefit from our presence on these lands and are committed to reconciliation. So the agenda for our session here this afternoon, we'll do an introduction of the team, the immediate project team, as well as the steering committee members. We'll take you through some of the background on the project that's led us up to where we are at this point. We'll talk about this phase of the project and the initiation and how we plan to move forward. Then we're going to open up the floor a little bit for some specific questions that we have and entertain some questions from the participants. And then we'll talk about next steps and where do we go from this point forward. So the introduction of the team, as you can see, there's a lot of people that are involved here. So just starting on the left, I'm Dean Plater. I'm the project principal for Colliers Project Leaders. Colliers is Canada's largest project management firm, and that's why we were asked to come in and lend some support as this project continues to develop. We have Amanda Lewis on the team. She's a manager within our team who's more or less acting as our project manager and keeping us in line. And we have Kaylee Bray, who's coming to us from Halifax today, and she's a senior associate within Colliers, and she's supporting a lot of the analytics and report writing and coordination of the different activities that are happening on the project. Then within the town of Collingwood, Dean introduced himself there early, so he's been identified as the project sponsor. We have Karen, who's coordinating many different things and helping us drive everything forward. And then town council is ultimately responsible for the oversight of this initiative and the approvals and providing guidance. Beyond the Colliers project team, given the nature of the type of this feasibility study / business case, if we could call it that, we brought in RLB, who is a quantity surveyor. So they're going to help us with some of the financial details related to the capital aspects of the project, the capital investment aspects of the project. We also have brought in our partners with Diamond Schmidt. Diamond Schmidt's a very well-known Canadian architectural firm that has a long list of successful arts and cultural type facility design and build out in the past. And then we have Nordicity, who's been working on this file for quite some time with the town of Collingwood and the various stakeholders. And their area of expertise is really around fundraising and philanthropy, specifically in arts and cultural type developments. And we see here that we have this great steering committee. So there was a call that went out to the sort of the general community looking for volunteers to come and give a bit of assistance to the project team and council and staff to help guide this initiative forward. And we went through a bit of what I would argue is a competitive process because there were so many people that raised their hand in the community. We had to really tailor it down and come up with the list of committee members that we have up here on the screens. We have Amber, Craig, Daniel, Erica, Jim, and Rob. So a little bit about the project background. So prior to Colliers and the team that I just put up on the screen, they're getting involved over the last couple of months here. There's been a fair amount of work. So there was a phase 1 and a phase 2, and within that phase 1, there was a preliminary feasibility study that was developed. There was sizing and scope refinement, bringing it a little bit further in, what might be in the realm of possible so far as developing this. And initially, 6 site locations were reviewed. Moving into the second phase of the project, there was a public consultation piece, further refinement of the things that had happened in phase 1, and really tightening up on the potential size and scope of the project, as well as what those sites may be. But where we're at today is this phase 3 piece that's up on the right-hand side. And the main elements that we're actually looking at within this phase of the project, we're looking at the design options and trying to determine what the best fit may be. We're taking the previous work that had been done with respect to both the capital investment as well as the operating cost and refining that into something that will help council make some informed decisions. And we're also looking at potential funding sources. So taking it a bit further into the community, seeing what types of support might be there and how that may offset some of both the initial investments as well as, the operating costs as this building will be around for a very long time. So in the project initiation that we're here talking about today, so what's really the objectives is taking the results from those previous phases, validating the various options, of which there are quite a few on the table, and then ideally making recommendations back to council so that they can make some informed decisions on a path forward. What's really important in all of this is supporting a vibrant and strong local and arts and community, cultural community, engaging with the community as we're doing here today to get perspectives and promote viewings of arts and culture. Ideally, have a facility that contains world-class exhibition and performance spaces, and generally enhance the public life of the city through, civic pride and, cultural assets that are of high value to the citizens. So as we work through this, some of the important pieces that are within the scope of the work that's being conducted at this point, as I said earlier, determining a few different concepts for a facility, looking at different sizing, what would actually be appropriate based on what the community has said, and we can anticipate so far as utilization of the facility. Developing some high-level site plans, including massing and floor plans. So really just at this point, this is the early stages of getting pen to paper and, it's taking this vision and converting it into something that's a little bit more meaningful than sort of the theoretical. As I said before, at this stage of the project, as we continue to elaborate into the costing from the work that had been done before, we speak in this consulting term where we talk about a Class D estimate, which is an elaboration of the previously higher order of magnitude costing that was done. So this is really taking it down to sort of the component of the building and getting a deeper understanding of what those construction costs might look like. As well, based on what we can anticipate for the use of the facility and the operating cost, we're going to develop an operating pro forma so that the city has a clear understanding of what it's going to take year over year to keep the lights on in this building and maintain it in a fashion that's appropriate for the community. Public consultation. This is the first of a couple of pieces of consultation that we'll be doing. And as we do these public consultations, what we're hoping to achieve is to get some insights of the community members and their perspectives on how this facility could shape up and what's going to be valuable for both this generation and the many generations to come behind us. The fundraising framework and viability assessment, really two different things. So our partners at Nordicity are working away very diligently at the moment in developing a fundraising framework. Now that framework is a bit of a roadmap as to how the fundraising can be developed to support the project. And then the second piece of that we call the viability assessment is we're going to do a bit of testing of that. So not just having a document before us with a strategy on how to develop funds, but we're actually going to do some early consultation with potential fundraisers and see what might be in the realm of possible to support the project. And then ultimately coming out at the back end of this, and we use this term a bit interchangeable, feasibility study and business case. Within this business case that we're developing, really, determining what all of the viable options are, and then sort of working through those and screening them and testing them and seeing what makes sense. The site selection will be in there. We have a fairly sizable piece of work within the scope where we're looking at the available sites and working with the staff and members in the community to see what is the most appropriate site. We actually have an evaluation framework that we're using for that, and coming out of the back end of that, we'll have sort of a weighted scoring of each of the different sites against a series of criteria so that we can make appropriate recommendations back up to council on that. Then ultimately, at the bottom of our business case, we'll come up with some recommendations and try to land on a final option and recommendation to council as to what the best path forward is for the project. So far as the timelines is, as we're starting to ramp up for the holidays, and this is where we are now. So we're into the fall of 2023. As I mentioned earlier, we're working away at site selection. And then carrying out over the course of the winter, we'll be working at the framework for fundraising and doing the testing of that, as I said. Moving into sort of Q1 2024, we'll be working on the options analysis and assessment. There's a lot of work that needs to happen in the background so that we can make sort of informed recommendations. Then as we get into the spring here, we're going to really have those options refined, and we'll be making recommendations to council, which will include a couple of concept designs and that detailed costing as I spoke about before. So here's where we start to move into the question. So that's really all the backstory about where we've been, where we are now, and where we intend to be over the course of the next couple of months, moving into 2024. And we're going to pose this first question here, and then we're going to open it up for some conversation. So should the Art Center vision be revised? So the previous vision for the Art Center, or the current vision, I guess we could say, was defined as follows. So accessible and affordable, flexible and future friendly, a place to consume, but also a place to connect, and complementary to the existing arts and activity spaces that are in the community now within Collingwood. Other potential components of the vision for consideration, the facility will and or should reflect the diversity of the people in the town of Collingwood. And the facility will demonstrate environmental stewardship, sustainability for community development, including climate resiliency, flexibility in programming, and some innovation in designs supporting energy conservation. So the question before us here, the first of a few that we have for you, does this vision align with the community members of Collingwood, or are there other things that should be considered in the vision?
So if you're attending virtually, feel free to raise your hand, and we can. Great, Karen, it looks like there's someone who has a question on your end.
Thank you. Yes, looks and sounds very impressive. Wishing it open tomorrow. Obviously, it can't. In the speak it closer.
Oh, the mic is off.
Yeah. Tyler, can you make sure it's on?
It might have just been turned off. Oh, they can hear it. We can't.
Oh, okay.
We can hear okay here.
Okay, continue on.
I won't rewind that. The real point I wanted to make was that within the vision on your third bullet, it's a place to consume, also to connect. It seems to me like the word create could well be in there because it seems to me that it would be a space where creation was happening.
Thank you.
Great, Karen, another question on your end?
I would like to add that what you have on the right-hand column should be included in the vision as well, with the environmental stewardship and sustainability.
Thanks.
Thank you. And I had another comment here in the front row.
Thank you. I would also like to add that I feel with the impact of tourism as part of our economy in this region, that should be a component of the vision as well. And that seems to be missing from my opinion, that we need to consider visitors to the region who will utilize the space as well.
Great comment. I
Thank
think
you.
that's everybody here, unless they're, oh, sorry, more hands.
Hi. Testing. Testing.
Perfect.
I can hear. Okay. I'm wondering, I'm wondering with the third bullet, I find the word consume a little bit odd, but the lady beside me and I discussed it. We're wondering if that's to deal with restaurant, bar space or something like that. And I'm wondering if we should have something such as a place to foster and appreciate the arts. To me, that is a given, but maybe not stated.
Thank you.
I just wanted to ask, for those of us kind of late to this, all the community work research that went on ahead of time, could you possibly share the locations being considered?
Dean, do you want to field that, or would you like for us to?
So I can. We have one more question to come from the crowd as well. But just going back to the first two studies and where we landed after the second phase, there are 3 sites that council approved to move forward with. One is, I call it the North St. Marie parking lot. So from here, it's sort of diagonally to the north. There is the South St. Marie lot, which is beside the Eddie Bush Arena. And then there is Pine Street, which everybody knows the Pine Street parking lot. So those are the 3 sites currently under consideration within this phase. Okay. Yeah, downtown.
So my question is related to this, the vision, and I'm wondering if in realizing an arts center, how important not just fostering arts, but very intentionally creating a space to grow arts amongst children. So the considerations for programming, for outreach possibilities, for really developing a local art scene and not just tapping into an existing one.
That's a great comment. Thank you.
Hi. My comment has to do with what future planning is taking place. You're suggesting that we convert 3 parking lots, one of, and build the art center there. It seems to me that that's very short-sighted on the part of the town. There is not a long-term vision in terms of the town expanding and growing. The other point with respect to that is we have an underutilized senior center, the Leisure Time Center, which is barely used at all, which is owned by the town, has a huge parking lot. There's a park beside it, the Japanese Park, which is barely utilized. It's all within walking distance from Hurontario Street. And that could be incorporated into one of your possible locations that needs to be considered instead of eliminating 1 parking lot out of 3. I think it's very short-sighted of the town. They need to have a vision in terms of what would this look like when we've got 50,000 people. Thank you.
Yeah, so thank you for that comment. And while Amanda's making her way over to Norm, who had his hand up for a question next, and I also noticed that a couple of people online are lit up. So we're going to maybe let Norm speak. I'll respond, Norm will speak, and then we'll go online for the people online to also provide their comments. So to answer the question, and I do appreciate that, this has taken some time, and perhaps as we've gone through the phases, not everybody's sort of been able to keep up with the progression of the things. But the Leisure Time Club, for example, that property was assessed as part of the, there were six or seven possible sites identified in phase 1. in phase two. Through various evaluations, they were sort of limited down to the 3. There was a bit of a differential review. And it can go for, just so we're understanding, like, it's not just that what we think might work there based on like there was some analysis done to determine things like traffic patterns, infrastructure. There were differential analysis put in place that ultimately eliminated the Leisure Time Club property and the Friendship Gardens adjacent as one of the sites recommended. The other thing I will mention is that relative to parking, that was also a concern of council's, and it was also brought up in the presentation to council at the end of phase 2, that parking would have to be established within the site, so we wouldn't be doing a net loss of parking. In fact, there's an opportunity potentially, and I say potentially because we haven't reached that level of design yet, but there's potentially to actually enhance parking so that they would actually potentially expand the amount of parking associated with the site. So your concerns and comments all right on point because they were all part of a conversation that occurred through phase 2. But that's the process that has led us to those 3. They weren't discounted, they weren't ignored, and they weren't overseen. They were a part of the analysis that led us to where we are today. So then Norm next, and then we'll go to the online folks.
Okay, thanks, Amanda, thanks, Dean. Now that council has identified those 3 sites, and I agree over the last 30 years, there have been many, many sites that have been considered, each with their own attributes and detriments. So I'm not here to question council's honing in on those sites. However, I do note that those sites are all within Canada's first nationally designated Heritage Conservation District. So some of us believe that architecture is an art form, and certainly blending in with the whole cultural vision and the tourism aspect. Downtown Collingwood is a tourist destination for its downtown built heritage. So I wonder if in the vision there should be or could be a clause, something like the external architecture to complement or be respective of or to recognize the surrounding cultural heritage designation.
Okay, thank you.
We'll move to Robin Hughes for the next question.
Hello, can you hear me okay?
Perfect.
Great. I just wanted to express support for including the word create, like a place to create, in the vision for the Arts Center. I think it's very important for it to be a space for, theater, dance, visual arts, music groups to have a place to come to rehearse and do that creation, because it can be a bit of a struggle to find those places at the moment for different community groups, especially for larger sizes.
Thanks, Robin.
Thank you. All right, we'll move to Jody for the next question.
Hi, thank you for all of your work. I'd like to build on what Robin said and add to the vision that the education portion, we have student voice involved, the youth in our community, to contribute to the vision. That also lends itself to future-friendly development. So I'd love to see an education component, which may also complement the create portion of it. Thank you.
Thanks, Jody.
Thank you. Great, and Charlie.
Hi, thank you. First of all, PRC, you've been doing a great job, and it's really nice to see this project moving along. One of the things that we looked at a long time ago in our group was the economic impact that a performing arts center would provide to Collingwood. And also one of the things that we looked at was maintaining it in the downtown areas so that when people came to the theater, they would be able to then go out onto Ontario Street and take advantage of all the businesses there. It's very important to have us be aware of the impact that it will have on businesses. So I'm thinking in the vision, I think we've got to mention somewhere economic impact. Because this type of center, earlier one of the comments was around tourism. certainly tourism is going to increase. I spend a lot of time in Niagara-on-the-Lake and Stratford, and I see what's going on there. And there's no reason why we can't develop into an area like that where we promote the arts. We have a wonderful area to play in summer and winter. And a lot of people have told me that visit Collingwood, the downtown, the stores are some of the best they've seen. We really have a wonderful gem with here Ontario Street, and we should take advantage of it. From the standpoint of potentially having the entrance where the economic development office is, having some underground parking in that area where the Eddie Bush parking lot is. So then it becomes an intricate part of the downtown of Collingwood. Those are just some of the areas that I've been thinking about.
Thanks for that, Charlie. So, and again, we're trying to be succinct with what we're presenting here today, and just really giving the highlights. But within our scope of work, we're actually conducting a preliminary economic impact assessment. We very much understand the importance of that. So that's actually within the scope of what we're looking at here as part of the overall business case.
Thanks. And now we'll move over to Ian, please.
Hi, can you hear me okay?
Perfect.
Yep. I like what Charlie was saying there about having it downtown and for that draw for all the businesses on the main street. I heard someone say, and I apologize if I missed it earlier, about the parking would be a net, that it would be incorporated with the site. How would that work? Is that underground or above ground, or how does that, what's the thought process there?
So Charlie, that's a very good question, but in all honesty, we're not there yet. So there's many options to be considered depending on which site sort of comes up. Is it surface parking? Is it potentially underground? What are the financial impacts of that? Just bringing it back a little bit, when I talked about the options analysis, that's the type of work that we're going to be doing after Christmas and determining what's in the realm of possible for the different sites.
Gotcha. I just know the water levels here at being so close to Georgian Bay will obviously be a concern. That's all for underground. Thank you.
I think that's it for the questions.
No, I think I see somebody waving a hand from the audience there, I think.
Yeah, all right. Looks like Karen got one.
It's not going to work unless it's on. Okay. Here we go. We have another question from the audience. Sorry, here we go.
Thank you. The previous gentleman echoed my concerns about underground parking, if that is an option, in that everywhere you're talking about is in a floodplain. And you're going to have to factor in the extra costs of being in that floodplain and dealing with the Nottawasaga Conservation Authority. Thank you.
Thank you for the comment. We're aware, and that actually falls within the analysis we'll be conducting.
Another question.
I have a question before I make my comments. So we've had phase 1 and phase 2. We're in phase 3. What have we spent so far on these phases?
I think the answer to the question is, I don't have the math in front of my head, but I think it's about 300,000 by the time we're done this phase. I think that's where we are roughly.
So this report today is not meant to be the end of this consultation cost, this phase. No. So I have to be honest. I think we're here to hear about what's going on. And I find this a little light on detail. I've been at the phase 1 and phase 2, and things were raised. And, you know, like the dollars talked about at the end of phase 2 was, I think, upward of $40 million. with parking, which will only increase, as we know. I meanwhile look at our town not having water solution, and we don't have the dollars for that. And the town is maybe going to be paying 40 million or more, which concerns me because the town is people. The town is taxpayers. And I talk to people who, that's a lot of money. And the impact should also consider that when they talked about 400, it was 200 cars coming here. I see that the potential for 600. And meanwhile, you can't get a parking spot. Our family home is on St. Marie Street. There's cars parked up and down that street every day now, and we're not 50,000. So underground parking is expensive. I've been involved in the development industry. Underground parking garages are expensive, have to be maintained. At 400, this was going to be a loss every year. So people, the town, are going to have to cover that. So I'm looking at this. We're not getting the costs here yet. And is it viable? That's
So quick answer to some of the questions. And I'm so pleased that you've made those comments because those have to be part of the considerations all the way through. That's what feasibility is. Feasibility is taking in all of those things into consideration. We've gone through some processes that have kind of narrowed the bullseye a little bit, but we aren't at the bullseye, and phase 3 will get us closer. But as we go towards the bullseye, there are going to be really important conversations that council have to take on. Things like costing with a fundraising plan. Do we see that potential? What are going to be the net impacts to taxpayers? What is going to be the projected parking outcome? Those are kind of ideas. This is why we're doing the analysis, is in order to bring those questions to the surface, get comments like you've just presented, and then ultimately a decision has to be made. That's what a business case is this going to be viable? And viable as a range of possibilities. Ranging from, in my opinion, the unlikely scenario of it paying for itself, all the way to what is the threshold for subsidy that would be acceptable by the taxpayer. So great that you're bringing them up, and I hope everybody feels free throughout this process, not just today, but to bring those ideas forward, because those are really important considerations before we get to the place where we move forward into implementation. If those ideas aren't shared, then they aren't going to be considered. So thank you for that. And I know Norm has a question.
Thanks very much. Two things. One, the lady mentioned there wasn't much detail, and I have to say, looking at some of the reports that were online, reports back and the staff reports, et cetera, there's quite a lot of detail as to what you've done so far. The number I think that was put forward was $25 million was roughly the estimate for those sites, but whatever. So the numbers are there. The one point I wanted to make in the vision and then the scope of work that's up next is that in early conversations, we talked quite a bit about the words used for this in terms of arts and culture versus other things like multi-use facility, et cetera. And I know you've heard all that before, but I wonder if in the description, there's no mention there of exhibition or meeting space, which might be worth including. There is a high demand for that around here, as you well know. And I think it might be worth including that in the sort of the overview of the various meeting spaces there, just so it's there. I realize some of the rooms could be used for that, but I think it's an important component. When I was living in Mississauga as a business, we used the Living Arts Centre quite a lot for meetings and for small exhibitions and so on. So it might be something to consider. Thanks.
Thank you. We have a question here online from Charlie.
Hi, thanks. I'm very interested in what the lady said about the town paying $40 million. Once again, our group has analyzed this and taken a look at a number of different theater projects around the province. And there's really a 3-tier system, potentially even a 4-tier system of financing these. So let's assume the cost is 40 million. The objective of fundraising is to raise a significant portion of that from the community. So let's assume that we raise 10 million. That leaves 30 million that has to be raised. Now we go to the feds, to the Heritage Canada, we go to the province, to the Arts and Culture Group, and we raise the 30 million. The town has very little exposure, and they've gained a $40 million asset. So please don't think or share or spread a rumor that the town of Collingwood's paying for this. They're not going to be paying that much for it. We're going to be paying for it with our fundraising efforts, and the province and the feds are going to be paying for the bulk of it. So I just want to clarify that. Thank you.
Thanks, Charlie.
Do we have a question in the audience again?
Yes, my question and comment has to do with, it's probably a little bit premature, but it has to do with sustainability of the center, regardless of which site is chosen. The gentleman down here mentioned rooms for meetings, and I'm not sure, you're probably well aware, the last count, I think we had 13 Probus clubs here in Collingwood who are all looking for affordable places for their meetings, which happen once a month. The one I belong to has 200 members. Another has over 200 members. So I think that's a good consideration for sustainability with rental of rooms. The second part of my is a question, and that is that have you considered liaising with Georgian College as I'm not up to date really on what their arts program is like, but I think that would be a good consideration because we do have a section of Georgian College here as well. Thanks.
Can I suggest, so thank you for that. Maybe we'll take the one more question that's in the queue here from David, and then we're actually starting to jump ahead to the next bit of materials. So I think it's kind of a natural progression that we'll jump forward after this next comment or question from David.
Thank you. You can hear me okay?
Very good.
All right. Just, yeah, before we leave the vision, I'm sure it's obvious to everyone as an arts and culture center, but I would like to maybe see the wording in the vision reflect that we are showcasing the arts. This is, I think, the main objective of this facility. And so maybe something to that effect could be in the wording. Second quick point I just wanted to make was the topic about, you know, a usage as a business space or an event conference space. I know conference center is a completely different vision and a completely different thing, but I've been in the corporate event business my whole life, and I know that a lot of business clients love to utilize like a theatrical stage for their business meetings, not just a hotel ballroom, you know, like at Blue Mountain in one of the hotels, but you know, something clients who want to do their 2 or 3 hour business presentation to an audience of 300 or 400 of their employees. It's great to be able to do it in a theater, speaking from experience, because you can create a very interesting and theatrical experience for that business audience. So maybe a sideline for this facility, but something to consider, I think.
That's great. Thank you very much, David. So we were starting to build up to this a little bit in the last few comments that came back from people here today. So what we hope to achieve in this section here, this is our second question. So the list that's up before you on the screen here with respect to the scope and maybe the features and, you know, aspects of the facility. So does the list that we see here actually more or less align with the, you know, what the community's hoping this facility can bring them? So public gathering areas, front of the house, in front of the house public gathering, the theater, as David just touched on there a little bit, high capacity fixed seating, a theater with small capacity and or flexible seating, administrative space, theater support spaces, which would naturally make sense given what we're talking about here. Studios and classrooms, kind of building on some of that thinking about, you know, the opportunities for learning and for the youth. Additional offices and catering spaces, and potentially even in retail and market spaces as another feature set for the building. Now, I did hear event space. Was there any other thoughts as to potentially what could be encompassed within this facility, and what does the town of Collingwood, as well as the tourists, believe are important aspects to be included in here? I think we have a hand back there in the audience.
Hi, thank you. I think integrated within either the public gathering areas or the front of house areas has to be space specifically designed for art, exhibition of art, artwork, whether it's artists can rent out the spaces or it's organized through an organization like the Blue Mountain Foundation for the Arts, without actually integrating that within the design of the space. A lot of contemporary buildings currently are not set up to have like mid-sized to large-scale art exhibits or art literally hanging on the walls. So I would like to see some sort of integration to ensure that yes, there would be space like studio space and classroom and workshop space for actual art making, but then having also the public exhibition spaces so that artists and organizations can host month to 2 month long gallery or exhibits within the space. I have another point too. I feel like it is also a missed opportunity within the front of house or public gathering spaces not to have space for a tourism, local tourism for the area. Again, as the BMFA in 65 Simcoe Street, we often are the place where people come to look for tourist information, which we just don't have. So it needs to be integrated within the design about how we're going to be representing and offering an availability for it to be the spot where people go to get information about what's happening in that space, but also within the broader community.
Thank you.
Thank you, Amber, for saying that too. And I just wanted to add to it, although it's not my area of expertise, but the Capitol Theatre in Port Hope has a beautiful relationship with their tourism association. The front of house includes their tourism office. And this is also done in Orangeville, at Theatre Orangeville. There's a wonderful collaboration through their tourism office and Theatre Orangeville. So I just add that as something you might want to visit.
In 2010 to 2014, I was involved with the creation of a performing arts center in Cambridge, Ontario, of which Diamond and Schmidt were the architects. So I'm very familiar with their incredible work. And that particular facility had immense infrastructure, many different components to it, slightly different model than I believe Collingwood needs at this time. But some of the less glamorous things of a performing arts center that I think are needed would be storage spaces, and also we've mentioned studios, but shops, so places where sets can be created or brought in, even if they're created elsewhere, that they still need to be put together. And so some of the working areas in the building need to be considered a bit more, I think.
Great, thank you.
David, I think you were next.
Thanks. I just wanted to echo that first comment about maybe what to add to this list is visual arts gallery space. And so I just wanted to echo that. I think it's, and a good model to perhaps look at is in Midland. They their old theater in Midland has beautiful gallery space, with beautiful professional lighting in there for hanging art exhibitions. And plus they have a gift shop and they have a full-on, live performing theater in there too. So that's, an interesting mix that I think on this list we should be including, visual arts galleries or gallery.
Thanks, David. Karen, another person from the audience?
Hello, I just want to ask about the studios and classroom point there, that if that's referring to smaller spaces, I just want to draw attention from the perspective of a performing artist, whether amateur or professional. One of the limitations they have is setting out their performance physically to make sure it works on the performance space. Now, no one expects to get into there maybe weeks or even days beforehand. They load in the night before and they find, oh, all their musical instruments don't fit the stage, or, oh, we've got to re-coordinate our blocking for this performance because we're 4 square meters off in our blocking. So one of the dream items, that wish list item I would have, is a rehearsal studio, which can also, and when I say rehearsal space, I mean like the size of a, let's say, elementary school gymnasium. Like I said, it's a wish list item. And in that space, there can be, flexible arrangement on the floor some way, not just taping down, but some, I don't know, magnetic strips, some way that artistic directors can map out the space for the performing artists to rehearse in real space measurement, real space reference. Very important for dance, actors, musicians, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you. Charlie, I think you're next.
Oh, sorry, Charlie, you're on mute there.
That's an absolutely valid statement that you made. And the gentleman before, when he mentioned Midland's got a rehearsal space in a small theater, and then the main theater that has flexible seating and so on. And one thing I was going to mention here was you have the 2 theaters, high capacity fixed seating and then small capacity flexible. I think it would be wise to change the fixed seating to the small capacity and the flexible seating to the high capacity. And the reason being is let's say we do have a 600 seat theater and a show sells 200 seats. There's now certainly capability to be able to make that 200 seats seem intimate and not an empty 600 seat theater. So that I would suggest maybe putting that in there and taking a look at that. Also, one of the performing artists in Collingwood I spoke to earlier about a wish list from the artist standpoint. And I know that the problem exists in both Niagara and Lake and Stratford, are places for the artists to live while they're running in a performance that lasts maybe a month, 2 months, to live. To maybe even have a couple of apartments inside the theater. I know this is a really big stretch, but when you think about it, I know that Stratford and Niagara-on-the-Lake have to have artist residences. So it's something to think about, just to keep in the back of your minds. And, shower space, things like that. I mean, doing art, performing art is a very strenuous job sometimes. So I just wanted to raise that. Thank you.
Thanks, Charlie.
Thank you. We'll go to Karen, someone in the audience.
Hi there. I'm just going to echo a few other comments that have now been said, but about storage. I think I'm a member of a couple of different theater groups in the local community, and as one of our groups, we are renting like a random garage. So it would be nice for some of these theater groups to come together and perhaps be able to store large flats for theater sets. So I think that really does need to be put on there. And for the studios and classrooms, I think 1 to 2 spaces not enough. I would say 4 minimum, especially the amount of people that have been talking about needing meeting spaces or rehearsal space. I would think 4 rooms would be more appropriate. And what Linda had said down there about making sure that these rooms are a minimum the size of whatever the stage is. So if there's a smaller stage, maybe there's 2 rooms that echo the size of that smaller stage, and then 2 rooms that echo the size of the larger stage, just so that that makes that very seamless when you're transitioning from rehearsal to the product on stage.
Thank you. I believe, do we want to move on in the interest of time, or are there any other questions?
So I think in the conversation, just being respectful of the time, we only have about 5 minutes left and a few more things to cover off. So I feel like, we've had a lot of conversation and we've all taken notes, in respect to this question and, sort of the highlights. In my notes over here, we talked some, potentially financial impacts. We talked tourism. We talked about education. We talked about creativity. We talked about culture and, probably 3 or 4 other things. So if there's any specific comments here that you would like to add, or we could jump to what the next steps of the project are and round it out there so people know where we're taking things. I think we see a hand.
I think this discussion is so exciting, and the possibility of having such a large center at the core of the community is such a rich opportunity to imagine what how vibrant the arts community could potentially be. My concern is that as we move along within the planning of this building, what resources are going directly into the arts community and organizations to support their development and growth in tandem or in parallel, so that when this building is built and open, that there is a vibrancy that the community itself is busting, and we will rush in to fill the void, versus having all of the resources and fundraising dollars over the next few years be put towards this building, and that we would not be funding the local arts organizations, that there'll be a deficit or depletion of the arts community and organizations, so that when it's opened, that vibrancy just isn't there, and this building will be considered a potential failure because it will take a very long time to build the infrastructure of the organizations to fill those spaces.
Thank you. That's actually a great question, and one that was part of the contemplations in phase 2. Nordicity did some discussion with local arts groups and understood that was a perceived deficit as well, that you get to a place where you've got this fantastic facility, but then there is this scaling up that needs to happen in order for it to be utilized in the way you envision. So that is not necessarily part of Collier's scope in this phase 3. However, it has been a part of discussions that we're having in the PRC department, and ultimately it'll be part of approaches with council when we look at the full envelope of how do we develop this. It will form some part of the business case in terms of understand, you set a vision, but you have to understand how to get to that vision. So it does have a place in the conversation, but it's I don't think we have the scope to analyze all of those needs and have an accurate picture by the end of phase 3 at this point. But it's definitely an awesome comment to bring up. I don't see any other questions here, Dean, if you wanted to move on in the interest of time.
Yep. So as we're running out of time here, I'll go quickly. So as we talked about in our project plan at the beginning of the presentation, so we're continuing along and having a deeper look at the sites and doing some analysis to see what's in the realm of possible. We're moving forward on our funding framework and viability testing over the course of the next couple of months. On the 18th of December, we are bringing an update to council as to where we are on the project, and I was going to thank you at the end, but I'll thank you all now for your time and your comments and your perspective and insights. What we gathered here from today will actually be built into what we report back to council, because they're very much interested to hear what the community has to say as well. And then we start moving forward into the finer, granular, more fun consulting, costing, and financial aspects in order to inform different options and analysis that we'll be conducting over the next few months. And that really is a wrap, folks. And again, I thank you all very much for your time today. Karen, did you have any, or Dean, and any final thoughts that you wanted to share, where people can direct questions to or otherwise as we wrap?
Yeah, so thank you, Dean. He's Dean P, I'm Dean C, by the way, there's two. Yeah, so no, just sort of echoing what Dean has said as well. Yeah. Sorry, before you get started, so people online can hear you.
Okay, thanks. I'm not too sure if the whole steering committee's here, but it'd be kind of nice if we could get you guys to stand up so we know faces to names and things like that. If that's not asking too much, I think it'd be great.
Yeah, thank you. People who've done, and I also noticed Craig Ashton is also online as well. I did see him as well. I'm not sure if other members of the steering committee, so Craig's there. And I see Rob. If that's Rob Hart's also a member of the steering committee as well. So yes, please, a round of applause for the steering committee for committing their time. Appreciate that. So yeah, to carry on and clean up here, this is not the end of the conversation. Obviously, we very much appreciate the feedback, even the hard question, actually, maybe even especially the hard questions and the challenging pieces, because those are going to help us sharpen the tip of the spear that gets us to where we need to go. So very, very much appreciated. Your time is valuable, so we don't want to waste any more of it. I would like everybody to give a round of applause, but for yourselves, because you showed up today, including the people online. So thank you very much. If you have comments after the fact, engage Collingwood. You can find it through the website. Feel free to send stuff along. If you haven't signed in, please do sign in. If you'd like to leave your index cards with questions, we'll take those as well and feed them into the system for evaluation as well. So again, thank you and have a great day.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.